Thank you, Mayor. And I'd add that the council member from Cupertino, I hate to say this, but the Cupertino is actually not manufacturing enough homes, probably exacerbating the housing crisis that we're in. They've accepted a 23,000 employee campus and are not building anywhere near the amount of housing, thereby driving up the costs in our city and causing us even more turmoil here. So, I appreciate other council members coming from other cities who are not cash strapped as we are and letting us know how to do our business. But this is democracy. No democracy works without compromise. No party, no position has a monopoly on wisdom. And that's actually a quote from Barack Obama. I am actually very worried about the small businesses here in San Jose. As a small business owner, I could tell you that, first of all, I don't pay minimum wage, but as soon as minimum wage goes up to $15 an hour, I have to raise mine well above that. So it will cause companies, regardless of whether they pay minimum wage or not, to raise their wages. And it will actually make it harder for people to start businesses because it will increase the opportunity to get into business. It will cost. It'll make it harder to get the loans because salaries will be higher. They'll have to get higher loans to get into small business to start anything. So let's walk into this knowing that what we're doing here is actually making it harder for small businesses to open, for small businesses to stay open, and to keep jobs here. So I don't necessarily agree with more anti-business legislation, but in the spirit of compromise that I mentioned, I'm willing to consider supporting something different than my personal understanding of the business world, which I'm in. If we're going to speed up the mandate that Governor Brown has already imposed, then we should at least follow the compromises that were suggested by the Office of Economic Development's staff, who actually studied the issue and have given us perspective that was gleaned by talking to both sides of the issue and not basically one side. The Office of Economic Development, recommended that the minimum wage increase be spread out and actually be implemented 2 years faster than the state of California. The mayor's is 1 year earlier than that, even. So I'm looking at this as a compromise, and I know that possibly the mayor's might be the compromise that works here. And I just want all of you to understand, there are differences between the city of San Jose and the cities around us. Some of them have, I think Mountain View, which doesn't touch our border, already implemented it, but the cities around us have not yet, or have not been, like Santa Clara and Los Gatos and all these Campbell and all these other ones have not implemented this, and may not, in fact, do that. Additionally, San Jose has passed 12 separate measures and mandates over the last 6 months that affect San Jose's businesses and not businesses around us. 12 measures in the last 6 months. And there's even more that I could, and if you guys saw my memo, there was even more that were passed in the years before. So we must see how mandates, in my opinion, we got to see how the mandates affect all these businesses before we impose even more. I was hoping that we'd get a whole year to let the dust settle on some of these stricter controls, and like, for example, $17 per square foot housing impact fee. There was 2 Measure A's that have passed in the last 6 months, both parcel taxes, that will affect the costs of rents on businesses. 2 Measure B's have passed, 1 quarter-cent sales tax that only applies to San Jose business, and a half-cent sales tax, also called Measure B, that passed in November, that will obviously affect San Jose businesses along with other businesses. We had Measure E pass, which will open our businesses and only our businesses to lawsuits, frivolous lawsuits, and will require our businesses to do a lot more filing and, cost them a lot to stay in business in San Jose. We've actually had Measure X and Y, both property taxes that could affect businesses and their rents. We've had Measure AA, EE, CC, HH pass as well, all new property taxes, all in San Jose, affecting San Jose businesses. These are these are just some of the impacts that I'm hoping that we could take a breath and allow our businesses to swallow all of these impacts and find out if they're going to be able to stay in business or not. So our surrounding cities don't have to deal with anything I just mentioned. None of them. Our businesses are already burdened. And so, I could see that there's a compromise brewing here, but I know that people are anxious to speed it up even more, and I'm not there about speeding it up even more. I am interested in finding out how at least restaurants will be affected, and I'd like to see if anybody from the restaurant industry or the chamber will come down and see if anybody's done any studies or any reflections on how at least the last minimum wage increase, Measure D, has affected, San Jose businesses. Could you comment on that?
Thank you, Councilmember Khamis. Jessica Linen with the California Restaurant Association on behalf of the San Jose members. There was a survey of specifically restaurants done by a third party in January of 2014, and it is the effects of the $10 minimum wage, as you mentioned, in Measure D. The survey results were pretty alarming. 2/3, 65% of the surveyed respondents said that the higher minimum wage caused a big increase to their total labor costs. 40% of businesses, and these are only restaurants, described that the added per location costs were between $10,000 and $69,000 per year, and a handful stated that the added costs exceeded $100,000, so that 2% per year, or that 25% of $2. 2/3 responded that their businesses raised their prices between 10 and 30% to cope with that 25% increase to the wages. Some of the other consequences that affected businesses were that 45% reduced employee hours, 42% reduced staffing hours, or the overall hours of operation to their restaurants. So that is the survey results of the effects to only restaurants from Measure D.
And so, has anybody are they still adding employees, or how has that affected employment? I'm actually interested. Are a lot of them converting to computers? For example, I've heard some anecdotal evidence, and this is just, I've heard, we're going to automate. I don't know if that's real. Is everybody going to be going to an automated cash register instead of a human being?
Yes, we have seen some of our chain members admit that they have bought kiosks for some of their locations, even here within Santa Clara County, San Jose specifically. We do know, I've gone to establishments where they have the Ziosk, where you order your drinks for a full-service restaurant through the animated system rather than flagging down your hostess. Other establishments are looking at ways, especially here in Santa Clara County, the heart of Silicon Valley, to look at other means of automation. We've seen establishments in San Francisco go completely automated for even full-service establishments. So it's not only just traditional quick serve, but full service as well, chain and non-chain.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So in our efforts to give people higher wages, we may end up taking away their jobs completely, at least some. And I I want everybody to understand, I've actually been in business for many years, and I've started 3. And the higher the barriers to entries are, the harder it is to get into business. So if you have to apply for a much larger loan because you have to survive over the next 6 months or 8 months or a year, it's going to be harder to pay off those loans. And so the harder we make things for business, the less we can expect businesses to come flocking to San Jose. And it seems like we're always on the wrong track, at least in the last couple of years, of making it much harder to do business in our city. I am not going to support the current motion on the table, but I am considering. I'm still up in the air. I think this thing will pass with or without me. But I just want us to, the longer we can allow businesses to breathe and soak in all these new costs, the better. And I'm hoping that the cooler heads here can prevail, and we can make some decisions that won't be as hard on our businesses. Because clearly, no matter how we're going to go here, we're going to make it harder to do business. There's no doubt about it. Whether we're going to go in 6 months, 1 year, or one week, it's going to be harder to do business in San Jose and elsewhere, of course. But I just don't want us to become an island of it, of a place that's harder to do business in.